welcome to the special called meeting, Joint Development Authority of the Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County and the City of Winterville. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to begin with the first item of business, which is the approval of the agenda. Can I hear a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
When was that sent out?
It's on the Google Drive. I sent it out on Friday.
Wait, we have a Google Drive.
There's a folder called meetings, and the agenda's in there. So in the same folder, the next step that we'll want to do is, if everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting. Did anyone have any changes to the minutes? If not, can I hear a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting?
There's one, I just have a question. Normally when you see a motion to do something, there's a second and it usually lists a name, and on E, the adjournment, there was no name for the second. I don't think it's really all that important, but I wasn't sure if y'all cared.
Well, let's fix it. So show me which one it was.
Excuse me for interrupting.
Oh, sure.
But there is a need to do that. It's in the open records law. The motion, the minutes reflect who made the motion, who seconded the motion, and what the vote was, and who voted yay or nay, and who abstained unless it's unanimous.
Yeah. So yeah, the second is missing on the adjourn motion. I don't remember who seconded it.
We did a vote by acclamation is, I think, how we decided to do it. We said all in favor, aye, right?
Yeah, but I thought someone seconded it. I think you had to have a motion and a second. I mean,
Just put me down as seconding it.
Okay.
Actually, weren't the meetings recorded?
I can go back and I'll go back and look for it.
If the meeting was recorded, then let's put down who actually seconded it. And if it wasn't recorded, since you can't retroactively, just put down by acclamation, and I guarantee no legal issues will arise from adjourning under that circumstance.
Okay.
so I motion to approve with that amendment if we can do that.
Okay.
Second. Matthews Morgan seconds.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'll go back and check that. All right. Let me switch back over to the agenda. So the next item that we have is to sort of go through our old business. And Dan, would you like to lead the group for that part to discuss the bylaws and the elections?
You'll recall that we started with the bylaws because the bylaws recite the officer positions and contain some other important information like how often we meet, what our regular meeting date is. And in connection with that, the seal is approved. I described the form of the seal last time. It still hasn't arrived yet. I did go through the bylaws with the directors, and I'd be glad to do that again. You have had a little time now to review, and I suppose maybe the first thing I should do is just ask if anyone has any questions about it.
Dan, I sent you a question about the terms and everybody not having the 4-year term so that everybody's not rolling off at the same time. Can you speak on that matter?
Glad to. In fact, Stephanie, if you like, when we get to council report, we can go through all of those questions, but we can do them whenever you want to, including right now. The 4-year terms are for the board members. And because this is a joint authority, the Development Authority's law allows the governments that adopt the concurrent resolutions to say what those terms were. So it's left up to the local governments, and in their discretion, they decided that those would be 4-year terms across the board. Both the initial terms would all end at the same time, and the subsequent terms would all end at the end of subsequent 4-year terms. Well, that can be changed, but it would have to be changed by an amendment to the activating resolution adopted by the local government. So it's not up to the directors. The directors can set the term of the officers, and that's one of the blanks in the bylaws.
So Kelly, was it the intention for everybody to roll off at the exact same time?
We tend to do a staggered term arrangement with other boards and authorities. And Dan, I'm testing my memory because I don't have this in front of me. Can people serve subsequent terms, or are they restrained to just a single term?
There's no term limit for directors.
Okay. And so I think that benefits us in that it's pretty typical for us to see continuity from one term to another for a lot of our boards and authorities. If we find ourselves with a challenge there, I think we could look to amend so that we've got some institutional memory. But given that you guys are all young and healthy and doing well, I would expect some continuity.
I had just a couple of comments on the bylaws. I noticed that several times there were male-specific terms for officers, chairman. I don't want to be necessarily politically correct, but I recommend that we just call chair and vice chair. Any references to him be him or her, just so that we're politically correct about all of that. The only other thing that I saw was the keeping of addresses for the secretary, and I just thought we might want to put in email addresses as well. I don't know if it's required or not, but anyway, that's my comments.
A couple of thoughts on that, David. In actuality, the terms for the officers are in the law, and that's what the General Assembly said. And I have from time to time made them gender neutral, and I hope I speak that way. I try to. It's gotten to be second nature with me, but not with the members of the General Assembly. So we can change the bylaws, but that doesn't change the title. The law dictates what the title is. It is what it is. And then the matter of email addresses, keep in mind that once those become a public record, and I think they already are, I mean, our email addresses are in the emails, which anybody could ask for a copy of. The public can get a copy of your personal email address if they want it. So I certainly don't have a problem with it, but I just want you to be aware of that. Do you have a motion to change the proposed bylaws in any way?
I can go either way. I mean, if the legislature forces us to use those exact titles, then we shouldn't change them.
I think you're right. And some laws, occasionally, because I watch legislation very closely, and every now and then I notice that somebody has gone through some law and made gender-related changes. So it's not impossible, or it's still a little unusual, but it does happen from time to time. But right now, that's what it says, and my advice would be to leave it the way the statute says.
There are a few pronouns like his, him or her, himself or herself. That's not assuming the statutes.
It is not.
So
all of those to there, if you like, THEIR.
Whatever. I mean, I could go either way, but I just trying to be a little politically correct here.
I would second a motion to change his to his.
Or any references to a male pronoun to be changed to both, to add both.
To what?
To allow to put both pronouns.
Can I make a substitute motion to use them, they, their?
Yeah, that's fine. It's in keeping with non-binary nomenclature. So
you notice that ILCA did that in the guidelines.
Yeah.
Or Microsoft did, one or the other. We ask for whatever the motion is to be restated so we get it right.
Motion to change pronouns to them where you use him, his, to them, they, their. He, him, his, they, them.
So,
Right order.
Okay.
I second.
Are we moving? We have to, there's some blanks that have to be filled in the bylaws. I guess what we're doing, that's an amendment to the proposed form. We're not voting on the bylaws themselves.
Correct.
We'll go through each thing that needs attention and then have a motion to adopt the bylaws as revised previously in the course of this meeting. So who's next?
I had a question about 4.9. Hold on, let me bring it up.
I can share my screen, I think. Let me try to do that.
I have my screen split. So section 4.9, postponement, adjournment. If a quorum does not exist, a majority of the directors present may postpone any meeting. It seems a little bit permissive. And if there's no quorum, we can't have a meeting. So it seems, I don't understand. I just don't understand. I'd like clarification on that point.
That's an exception. The law requires notice of meetings. You can have a situation where you've given the notice, less than a quorum shows, members of the public show. And then two things can happen. Everybody gets up and walks away because there's not a quorum, or with the public there, then the quorum sets another day for the meeting to resume, and you'd still have to give notice. It's just that you know what date the notice would be given of.
So I would propose that we change the language to indicate that you may do one of two things, because that doesn't through in the way that it's written, and the way that it's written seems self. You cancel yourself out. I forget the word right now.
Okay.
Sorry, I've been working from home all day, back-to-back meetings. I'm a little fried.
Yeah, my reading of it is that when a majority of directors present could be one person, and they shouldn't be able to postpone a meeting to another date. Well, I know that it talks about open meetings laws, and it's got to be done by the board as a whole.
It sounds like, reacting to that, the board would prefer that if there's not a quorum, then the meeting, actually it's not a meeting, the gathering is dispersed and the board calls another meeting on proper notice.
Right.
Is that what you would like? Okay. Yeah. Simone, is that consistent with what you want?
I'm just a grammar nerd, and that didn't make sense to me the way that it was written.
Many things about the way that legal stuff is written don't even make sense to me, but yeah, we'll make this one read the way that you'd like for it to.
Because I made a note of it when I was reading it, and it seemed that if there isn't quorum, there isn't a meeting. So the fact that it seemed like you could do that, and I was just, I wanted to get clarification before I made a request for a replacement.
It's the only thing that the directors present can do. As David said, if it's just one director, that he or she can set another date. But if it's the will of the board, and maybe we ought to have a vote on it, then I'll revise it to say that if there's not a quorum present, then the gathering disperses and it's the duty of the board to call another meeting.
That's my take.
Other questions or requests or motions?
Do Do we want to lose the email out of the list? Because I know that people can get it anyway. The secretaries, under the secretaries, information to be kept.
Okay.
Like I said, I can go either way.
No reason not to do it. I mean, it's public now anyway. I can tell you occasionally, though, directors don't like that, but if you get an open records request, you know, your personal devices are subject to that anyway, so it doesn't matter that much.
Well, that brings up an important issue. On some authorities or commissions I've been on, we set up an email address that we use exclusively for that, so that our personal email is not ever asked for. Maybe we could do that with this one if anybody was worried about their personal email address.
I would actually be really into that.
That's a question for staff. Staff, what do you think? Can we do that? Okay.
Read it one more time for me.
It is true, in fact, more do it than not, that an authority will provide an official email for the board members. And that might be just adding names to, you know, the email domain of one of the two local governments. A lot of development authorities have their own domain. They have their own website. And one of Stephanie's questions was, when we get the revolving loan fund, what do we do next? And so there will be mostly plans, programs, and projects that this authority from time to time will be called on or will initiate. And you would want to more than likely have that infrastructure. I mean, you may not need it right now, but if you're going to adopt the practice of using an official domain email, then the earlier you do that, the better. And some authorities, like one of the DDAs I represent, has board member name, city name, DDA@gmail.com, and that's worked out fine.
So does every member get basically the ability to post messages from that email address? So you don't expose your personal email address when communicating?
That's right.
So we all have to have access.
Check your emails, though.
You get individual accounts. I mean, it's just an email account.
Got it. Everybody gets a generic or one to that JDA. One for each member of the JDA. Okay.
So would y'all like to use Gmail or a system like that, or would you like me to do some research, whether ACC will do that for us, or if there's, of course, then it'd be acc.gov, but accgov.com, or if there's another route that you'd like to have that's like JDA specific domain.
I will suggest that on some other ones I've been on, people do their own things. Some people get Gmail, some people use Yahoo, and they just say, this is the one I'm using for this purpose, and that's the only one that's listed for them. I don't even think it's all that important if we're on the same domain or the same format of emails, just that we decide which email we want to be our official email for purposes of this authority.
For the ease of accessing the Google Docs, I would recommend choosing a Gmail-based account.
True.
I agree.
Are we going to have a website so that people have a place where they can go to access information about whatever projects we have? Yeah. That would be.
I did not hear a word of what you said.
We all have an email. And then also, if somebody cycles off the board, then that email will still be accessible.
Erica, I apologize, but your voice is coming through very garbled, and I don't think any of us were able to quite hear what you were saying.
I'm sorry. Yeah, welcome to Windstream. I'm in Winterville, and I don't have any kind of plug-in. So if we are going to have a website, we should all have our email through the website. I think it's made to have the email boxes, because then when people cycle off the board, you could still catch emails. The authority would still be getting the email instead of going to the
You could decide this at a later point, like, and not have to deal with this in a board meeting, because it is a preference thing. But I think to Dan's point, to say we'll have email addresses of some sort, yes, I think that's fine.
David, do you still want the existing emails collected and added to the official list of members and contact information?
It doesn't matter. Once I can go either way.
It's y'all's decision. I'm just a lawyer, but it sounds like it would be better to wait until we sort this out. And maybe the individual board members email ILCA with their preferred email address. And if their preference is to have an official address, then state that, and we'll see what we can do about it.
That works great. I actually have a spreadsheet with all of your contact information. And if you want, just send me an email with whichever email you'd like to use, and I'll replace the one that I currently have with the one that you tell me to use.
Sounds good to me.
Well, back to the bylaws, actually, there are a couple of things that we need to hit. One is the officer's term, and one is how often we meet as a regular meeting. We meet as frequently as you want to as a special meeting. But are there other board member questions or requests or motions on the proposed bylaws?
Not for me.
All right. Well, then what would you like for officer terms?
Personally, I've found that it's useful if they're 1-year terms or 2-year terms, because it's a lot of pressure on someone to be in an officer position. And if it's a 1-year term, they have an out to do it for 1 year. But I've seen it be renewable in case they are really good, they like doing it, and the others want to continue. But at least there's an out if it's just killing them.
The term that I see most frequently is 1 year. Although a lot of authority chairs, particularly DDA chairs, stay for quite a while. When you initiate a program, you want continuity usually, but you can have continuity just by reelecting that person.
Right.
1 year, again, it's the board's
1 year term.
1 year term.
Yes.
Why don't we do it this way? Anybody have another preference as to what the term might be?
I think a year is great as long as it's renewable.
And it is.
Point of clarification, we're talking about the term of the officers, not the directors, correct?
Correct. Terms of directors are beyond our control. All right, the other one is how frequently do you want to have regular meetings?
Dan, I'd recommend at least semi-annually and as needed. I also sit on the IDA board, and it just meets annually sometimes. And I've had the experience of coming to an annual meeting and just trying to unearth from my memory like why we're there. And so I think at least slightly more frequently, at least every 6 months, and then as necessary, given projects that may be underway.
Other thoughts?
So only one piece of information I'd like to share is I think we'll be meeting pretty frequently until this first set of funds go out the door. In other words, you'll be meeting, it'll go through underwriting, you'll be reviewing and deciding, the loans will be awarded. But after that, it's almost like a very long repayment time period when there really will not be funds in the fund to be able to do anything with. So I just wanted to share that bit of information. Like up front, I think it'll probably be more rapid and often, and then you'll have sort of a longer period in between where we're waiting when funds come back in so that they're then available for future loans.
And this is the way they are just because it's been done that way, and maybe done that way not even in the same context. But if I were to have all the bylaws of every joint authority in the state of Georgia piled up beside me 80% of them would say that the authority meets quarterly. And the reason for that is if you're a joint county authority and you want to get the bump in the job tax credit, you're supposed to meet quarterly. So there's no, I mean, that was Mac Holliday wanting to make sure that these were active bona fide. It reminds me, oh brother, where art thou? Active and bona fide authorities. So, and back to Kelly's point earlier, and this isn't even a legal opinion. This is just my opinion. If you don't meet but once a year, it makes it difficult to get things done. And you just remember why you're there in the first place. So yeah, Ilka is also correct that meetings will be fairly frequent while the emergency period and recovery period is going on. But hopefully the JDA will have other things that are brought to it or things that it may bring up. And having to plan for a meeting gives you, there's nothing like a deadline to make things happen. So if the majority doesn't think that monthly is best, maybe quarterly is a good solution. And this is something that the board members can change anytime. So you're not stuck with this for a year or 4 years or forever. This is up to you. Change it anytime.
Well, my constituents, to reference another brother, where art thou? Quarterly is good.
Would we do a special called meeting for anything that we absolutely have to meet about before that quarter's up for the beginning? And
absolutely. And not even that you absolutely have to do, that you want to do or should do or feel bad about letting time fly. So yes, special meetings can be called, and the bylaws say who can call them. It says it gives the procedure for how they're called and the notice that has to be given and everything.
So Dan, is it not like kind of like trying to get around the requirements when you set, well, what would stop someone from saying we have a meeting once a year and then we have 40 meetings that are special called? Like, is there some ratio that you're supposed to not exceed?
No. If you are having one special meeting a month, that's a pretty strong argument to make your regular meetings monthly meetings though.
Okay. Then I motion that we set it for quarterly and call special meetings if we need to.
I'll second that.
But on what and what time, I don't have an idea about that right now.
Well, that's right. We need to put something in the bylaws about it.
Wednesday works pretty good. What do y'all think?
Yeah, it's fine. I'm not sure this needs to be a motion. I thought we were going to put a motion at the end to adopt all the changes that we've discussed in one motion, right? Or not?
We can get, I agree. Why don't we just get the consensus as we go?
So as far as the time goes, I have a day job that is not so flexible. And so far as I know, school is out at 3:30. And so I could be in most places in the county by 4 o'clock.
4 is good for me.
4 is good also.
Or later if other people have scheduling issues, but definitely not during the school day.
Sure.
4 works for me.
It's 24/7 with me. It can be 4 a.m. That's okay. I did write down PM though.
And Wednesdays are good.
For the sake of open,
For
the sake of open meetings, and once we're physically in a place and if we want access to the community, I would actually recommend something after the end of the workday, like 6 or 7, depending on how long our meetings plan on going.
Also,
It's going to be fairly busy, and we do a lot of board and authority meetings kind of during the day or early-ish afternoon, particularly those that I guess I would describe as kind of having a more narrow frame.
I recognize that in the beginning, the meetings are going to be a little bit more drawn out, more regular, but in the future, it seems that's going to, once the ball is rolling, it's just going to quick meetings keep them rolling. And if we want to have community engagement. I know when I'm not home from work every day, I could not make meetings that were before 5 if I wanted as a public citizen to attend them. I mean, I'm happy to be outvoted, but that's just my personal opinion.
Speaking from someone with family and kids, 4 o'clock works best because, you know, you have responsibilities after that. But I do understand your point. And maybe someone, if they were really interested in it, could come to one. Maybe someone wouldn't be coming to all of them. I don't know how to solve that, but I think there's always going to be people with a conflict no matter what time you do it. Like people that work at night, they can't come if it's at 5. But if 4 works for everybody on this group so far, does 5 also work, or is 4 really better?
I think any time before time speak. So if you want me to see later, that's okay.
Poor Erica, we can't hear anything you say.
Erica, can you maybe chat your comments?
Yeah. Okay.
I can hear her typing.
Um, go.
Hello?
So everyone else everybody that said they can meet it at 4 also do 5s? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
5, how about you?
Yeah, I can. I prefer 4, but 5 is fine. Our nights get eaten up so often that I like to reserve whatever glimmer of hope I have for afternoons with the family, but 5's fine.
Yeah, I know.
Wednesday's a good day though, because that's right in the middle of, that's usually a soft day for those kind of meetings, for evening meetings. So that's fine.
Kelly, when we're doing in-person meetings, does 5 create a conflict that 4 wouldn't in terms of finding place to do it?
No, I mean, in terms of location, each of those is equally viable. I mean, we've got a lot of spaces for a meeting this size that also could accommodate some outside folks. So 4 or 5 work. I mean, I'm just similarly situated around family and kind of frequency of my Tuesday and Thursday meetings, especially that a relatively early sign off is nice occasionally.
Could we keep it to 1 hour?
That'd be great.
So maybe 5 to 6, and that would be a compromise. Okay.
Good luck with that.
Of course, special meetings anytime. That's just the time for the regular meeting.
Right. That's true.
Okay. Yeah. So for the next few months, we can meet it whenever we want, but once it's open to the public, I think we should hear to it later in the day.
So I've got quarterly meetings, 5 p.m. on Wednesday. And now I've got a question. So which month and which Wednesday?
Oh, good Lord.
We don't want the public to show up in March and we're going to meet in February.
That's a good point. I don't care.
Actually, could we do anything other than March and whatever the subsequent 3-month cycle would be? We do have another joint development authority with Gwinnett, Barrow, and Oconee counties, and that actually would have been meeting today if those meetings were active immediately prior to this. So if we could bump it to February and whatever 3 months from there is, I don't even know the names of the months anymore.
I like that schedule because actually when you're doing treasurer's report, you could give your treasurer's report in February for, the previous 3 months and have a complete quarter. Where when you stick it in March, you have that problem of not a complete quarter of information. So I love February and the subsequent quarters.
So the first Wednesday of the last month of the quarter.
First Wednesday of the second month.
February, because the quarter would end in, the quarter would end at the end of March.
Okay. So the first Wednesday of the second month.
So what's the latest?
I forget what our fiscal year was, so I forget which month we're starting on.
Starts July 1st, but not particularly relevant. Just like for reporting, a nice quarter of information is the best. If you meet where you're not waiting for that quarter to end, should be current. So February, closer to March would be better actually, because then your information, or closer to January, your information's more current because you'll be doing the previous quarter. So maybe the first week in February is the best, and then every 3 months.
So I wrote down the second month of each quarter on the first Wednesday.
Correct.
It's good.
Thank you. It's the first time I've ever heard anybody express a preference for meeting in February, but that means there won't be a lot of competition for meeting places.
Well, I can't tell you how hard it is to do reports when you're trying to do it on a quarter and you're in it, or you're so far away from the previous one it's no longer current.
I'm going to check the bylaws real quick to make sure that we've hit everything that needs to be hit, so bear with me a second. We actually, just to point out, it was already in the bylaws that our fiscal year is Athens-Clarke's fiscal year, which ends on June, at the end of June.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. So unless there's other customization that's needed, then we could entertain a motion to adopt the bylaws as presented, changing personal pronouns to them, their, and they. Okay. And then 4.9, if there's no quorum, disperse and the board resets the meeting. Officer terms 1 year, regular meeting, second month of each quarter on the first Wednesday.
I so move.
Second.
I'll call for it. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, thank you, board members. All right, so now we have bylaws, and along with that goes the seal. Let's have in that motion that the board approve the seal as described. If y'all are ready to move to the election of officers, the first thing we would do would be to elect a chair. And notice that I put on the agenda chair, who would preside for the rest of the meeting. So are y'all ready for that?
Yeah.
Do I hear a nomination for chair?
I nominate Stephanie.
No, I really don't want to do that, but I nominate David.
I forgot to mute myself. Sorry.
I second that.
Thanks, Todd. I will serve if elected.
Other nominations?
I am retired, so I do have some time on my hands.
Awesome.
I don't know many idle retired people, but
Well, I'm not idle, but I'm retired.
that's what I mean. So I guess we move nominations to be closed. Anybody have that motion?
I move that we close the nominations.
This is the nominations for chair. There'll be nominations for the other offices next. So if there are no further nominations for chair, then normally you'd have a motion to terminate nominations for chair and second and vote on that and then vote on the chair.
I motion to terminate nominations.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
I abstain.
David, if you lose this, it's going to be embarrassing.
I've been embarrassed before, so
All in favor of David as chair of the JDA, say aye.
Aye.
abstain.
Unanimous, Mr. Chairman, congratulations, you're up.
All right. Do I take over from here on?
You take over from here on with a great sigh of relief from me and Ilka.
Okay. Well, looking at the agenda, now that you guys have condemned me to, elect me, let's move on to the election of vice chair. Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
Will one of the mayors be doing an officer position, or y'all just don't have the time and don't want to do it?
My bandwidth is a little bit in right now.
I'm right there with you, Kelly. I just don't think I could do it justice.
I nominate Simone.
I second.
I'd like to move the nominations to be closed.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of closing the nominations, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Now, for the vote, the only person up for vice chair, Simone.
I think unopposed is a good way to run.
I don't know if you need a motion, but let all those in favor of Simone as vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, next position is the secretary. I'm open nominations for secretary.
Nominate Stephanie.
Nominate Tim.
Ladies first.
I've already got this on another one. You take it.
Exactly. You have so much experience. We
No.
can't.
No.
I will second that.
So Stephanie, are you saying you will not serve in that role?
I will not. No.
Okay, so we only have one nomination. I think that Tim, are you willing to be serving in that role?
I guess I am. Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, before we vote, question.
Yeah.
We can have a secretary and a treasurer. We have to have one of each. Or we can have a secretary dash treasurer.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So are we nominating Tim as secretary dash treasurer or secretary or just secretary?
Might I wanted to say something that I would love for him to be secretary treasurer, but treasurer is something that I have a lot of experience on. And I'm happy to serve in that role if you guys want 4 officers.
I'm with that.
I would much prefer that.
Yeah, based upon the bio, I agree. So let's just make it secretary, and so far Tim has agreed to serve. Is there a motion to close the nominations for secretary?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Call for the motion. All those in favor of closing the nominations, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Now, all those in favor of Tim as the secretary of the board, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries, or election carried unanimously. And now for the treasurer, I think we've had somebody say they definitely have the experience and the interest. So I
Formally
believe,
nominated.
Stephanie, you've been nominated or self-nominated.
Fine with me.
Is there a second to that nomination?
Second.
All right, is there a motion to close the nominations?
So moved.
Second? Is there a second? I can't second it, Chair.
Second.
Erica seconded.
All right, all those in favor of closing the nominations for treasurer?
Aye.
All right, opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, all those in favor of Stephanie as treasurer for the board,
Aye.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, she, by unanimous consent, she's now the treasurer. We now have all of the officer positions filled.
Congratulations, officers, and congratulations, board, on getting such a great slate of officers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like, you're welcome. Yes. All right, moving on to new business. For the directors, the discussion of the RLF that was sent out to everybody. I guess we go, I've got it here, and we should start right at the top and maybe go through it. Does anybody see any changes needed to the mission?
David, do you want to put it on the screen? Or you want me to put it on the screen?
Yeah, no, yeah, if you give me the, am I allowed to screen share?
I think you are.
It's the third button. It looks like an upload button.
It's okay. It's grayed out on my computer, so
Let me see if I can figure out how to change it.
I know with Zoom you can change it so that others can share the screens.
Let me see if I can pull it up myself. That might be faster.
Okay.
All right, hold on, let me just give me 1 second. This is my first time doing it, so.
While we're waiting on this, I did have a question. Kelly, tell me if I'm wrong, but I kind of thought that this money that you had given to the JDA to distribute these loans was supposed to be kind of an emergency measure, but the way this mission reads, that's not part of it. Did that change?
I guess describe emergency measure.
Well, to help businesses that are struggling to remain open. And the way this mission reads, it's like fostering and improving and building businesses and making them stronger, but not saving them from complete disaster.
Okay, that helps, Stephanie. Yeah, I mean, really, mission is more in the form or frame. I don't know if those are all mutually exclusive, but I mean, the idea was to ensure that there was a local pot of funds that was in some ways more flexible than the federal dollars, which we've seen some improvement in recent weeks, but still.
We could probably solve it by where in the first paragraph it says is to support entrepreneurs to grow successful businesses. We could add the verb to revive and grow small businesses. And that kind of puts that feeling in there.
Makes sense.
Are you all able to see my screen right now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I tried sharing my screen, but I guess you got yours first.
So if it's okay, I'll make the edits as you guys talk, so then you'll be able to see it live.
Can you increase the font size so we can see it a little bit better?
Sure. How's that?
That's good.
There you go.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, let's section at a time. The first section is the mission. I had no changes to the mission from my reading of it. Are there any other changes that people want to make to the mission?
So Stephanie's has been added, and I like that as well, to revive and grow.
Okay. you gonna make those as track changes or just gonna just make changes?
I can do track changes. Hold on.
It might just show what we've modified, because right now we can't really tell what we've modified.
So I've got it set on for right now, but the only thing that I've changed right now is this thing that I just highlighted, revive and grow.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, you could retype it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can undo and redo.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other changes to the 3 paragraphs in the mission?
I have a question. What is the support network?
Can y'all hear me? So that is the information towards the bottom of all the partners that are able to help with business advice, connection to other types of loan or financial resources, coaching, and whatnot.
So we already have a support network in place, or we've got to develop that.
We started having those conversations already, and the things that are noted down towards the bottom of the document where people have agreed to share referrals and work together, those are the things with our initial conversations that we kind of talked about. But of course, as we keep going, we can continue to build that out.
Okay, yeah, I saw that. I didn't really understand that was the network. Okay, cool.
The thing with the community foundation has not yet been established because I wanted to make sure, have y'all discuss and decide what you would like to do. But we have talked about it with Sarah, and she was very supportive. And whenever y'all are ready or not ready, either way, she's glad to go either way.
Okay.
How about then if we, prior to the last sentence, in that last paragraph, loan repayments, put something parenthetically, please see the section on, and then there's a list of all those groups so we can reference it in the beginning of the document. The support network is written out, right, later on in the document?
Yes, I need to scroll. Let me scroll down and just see what I called that section. Small business support.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be my recommendation.
Can we add in the very beginning, second line, equitably support entrepreneurs?
Just 1 second. Let me add this.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, so I'm looking at it somewhere else. It would help if I look at it here.
Okay, I think it's the first sentence to, at the end of the second line is to equitably support. Is that what the recommended change?
Yes, please.
I don't know what that really means. I'm fine with it, but I don't know what that means.
To help those that need the help more than those that make more impact. To have greater community outlook when making these financial decisions.
Maybe equitably isn't the right word. Maybe because I see that as, maybe I'm just reading it as help everyone equally, and that's not really what you're meaning.
No,
That's not what equitable means.
yeah. Equality and equitability are different.
Can it be measured? I mean, can you say we did that?
Sure, you could, but I think it's one of those more discretionary things.
Yeah, we when we're looking at applications, we can create a weighting system where we look at different factors and demographic data that can guide us to create a more equitable program and not worry about equality.
Yeah.
Which is not equitable.
I mean, I like that we have that there. I just want to make sure if we say it, that we can come back and say that we did it.
For it, right.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying is let's think about how we will do that if it's ever pointed out, well, we don't think that you were equitable in this decision.
I think these weighted criteria would bear out what we were looking at.
Yeah.
Yes.
So are we keeping it in, or are we just referring, planning on documenting it through the other sections? I don't have any qualms with leaving it in.
My qualms leaving it. Just so we think about that.
Okay. Anything else in the mission section? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to the goals and objectives section. I didn't have any questions about this section or comments. Anybody else?
My only question was, Ilka, on a new business that may not have paid occupational taxes, are they not eligible?
Well, that's really for y'all to decide. I guess when I was sort of thinking about it and talking to people, it went along with the question of if we have limited resources of taxpayer dollars and we need to be picking who we're going to support, how do we determine, I guess in my mind, it would probably be those that had been already established for several years and were quote unquote official businesses as far as paying their taxes, since public funds would be going to support them. So that's why we were thinking 2 years as opposed to, say, a startup business that may not have been solid financially prior to COVID occurring.
So I remember being a home-based business and you're supposed to file an occupational tax, but I know good and well that is not happening widespread across the county. And we may get a lot of applicants from people that are home-based businesses. So how would we say you're not eligible?
I mean, that's up to y'all to determine. I did post some numbers today so that you can look at some of the number of businesses with 1 to 2 employees. Be helpful just so you can see the number that have paid occupational tax. It's actually, that's the largest percentage of businesses. Are y'all aren't able to see my screen, but I was going to share the number with you really quick in case it's helpful. So there's 4,551 businesses with between 1 and 20 employees. Of those, 1,311 have 1 employee. So those are likely maybe your home-based businesses.
And bear in mind that Winterville has its own licensing as well. I don't know if those numbers are included in that, but we have our own licensing in the city of Winterville.
Exactly right. Thank you for mentioning that. It does not include the businesses within the city limits of Winterville that are taxed by Winterville.
Right. Okay.
I'm happy with the occupational, the 2-year thing. I just want to make sure that nobody was concerned about that because it would mean home-based businesses that hadn't filed properly would be excluded from this.
And that's defined down in the sections about the loans. So let's nail that down when we get to that section. So under goals and objectives, is there anything else? I know it says up to date on occupancy taxes, but we can clarify that in that subsequent section. Okay, anything else? All right, let's move on to joint development authority roles. That one comment about themselves, I put himself or herself, or themself, I guess is the generic term for him, her, or them. So we can leave that there.
Stop moving the screen.
Okay, anybody else have any comments about the joint development role section? All right, if not hearing none, let's move on to the next major section, which is emergency phase lending. And I have a question for you, Dan, about this.
Sure.
I was looking at Georgia Code, 3662. I think that's the one that refers to authorities.
3662(1) is the Development Authorities Law.
Right. And in that, 3630, well, whatever. There's no reference to you spending money for things like payroll and that kind of stuff. It's not included in that. I know we're in a COVID phase, but can we really give out loans for that use the criteria of payroll and utilities, because it's not in the statute?
Share my screen for a minute. Give me just a second to get it up.
Birthday party. You're there. You can talk. I can hear you. Say hello.
Do I need to go downstairs?
Balder.
Dan, are you looking at it right now?
I'll bring this up on the screen right now.
Ilka, do you have to unshare or for Dan to share?
I've got it. Stop sharing content as soon as you start sharing. So I'm sharing.
Okay.
See that? Does everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. So what's going on? Dave, you're absolutely right about, let me get these. There we go. That's out of the way now. So you're right that the listed powers and the issuance of bonds are to finance projects, which is sticks and bricks and equipment. There is one subsection in the list of powers that authorizes a statutory authority like this one to do what's in the middle part of the process chart there, to expend funds to promote industry, agriculture, and trade. So we're finding a constitutionally authorized power, and that's the Development Authorities Law is a constitutionally approved statute, and it contains this provision allowing the expenditure of funds to promote industry, agriculture, and trade. So how do you do that? It doesn't tell you how you must do it or how you can do it. It just says that you're able to do that. So we look for a reasonable means of carrying out that governmental mission. So what is a reasonable means? So we take something that is illegal, which is just writing a check to the local business and making a contract. So we make a contract with a local business to obtain a public benefit aligned with our governmental mission. And we document that that public benefit has been obtained, and we procure a remedy if it has not been. So our contract is going to be the guidelines plus the other program documents. This is as good a time as any. What I envision the program documents being are the guidelines, an application, which will match up the eligibility and public benefit consideration aspects of the guidelines that we'll get to shortly. Evaluation factors for scoring the applications to indicate who the awards of the loan should be made to. An award document, which can just be a letter. Promissory note, because we're making a loan and they have to be repaid. And in the next phase, the thought is that we would have collateral, so there will have to be security documents. So what we're doing is not making a loan. We're making the loan as a means to carry out our governmental mission of promoting industry, agriculture, and trade. And when you get a little deeper into the guidelines, you'll see that the borrowers are committing not only to repay the loan, but to do certain things that promote industry, agriculture, and trade.
I'm just curious, the industry, agriculture, and trade seems like a very nebulous set of terms that could be broadly defined or narrowly defined. Is there I mean, obviously, we're looking at providing any business that has employees with loans. Do they all fit into industry, trade, and agriculture? I mean, obviously not agriculture, but.
Well, it goes back to this. You see the Georgia Constitution in this slide.
Mhm.
All statutory authorities are authorized constitutionally. Remember that first bubble in the process chart, find a constitutionally authorized provision. So in the Georgia Constitution, it says the General Assembly is authorized to create development authorities to promote trade, commerce, industry, and employment opportunities, no more than that. And there are court cases about what that means. I actually won one last year that went to the Georgia Supreme Court about whether a destination grocery store was the promotion of trade, commerce, industry, and employment opportunities. And it is. So it is a question of fact, but we're not, so it's up to the authority to do things in the right way so that the question of fact is resolved the way that we want it to be. But we're not going to do this randomly. So you see, this is the process chart, the flow chart for this revolving loan fund. So is the applicant a type of business that is eligible under the governing law? So single family residential housing is not authorized by the Development Authority's law. So we couldn't do anything with single family residential. There's some constitutional provisions, which I can get into, that say that we're not authorized to support religious institutions. And that's because of the Blaine Amendment to the Georgia Constitution. So folks have to be qualified. It can't be first come, first served. We document that as part of this. The application will require some of this documentation. Then we, the board, will act on this. It's not like first come, first served. Every application will be considered individually, and there will be a finding in the form of resolutions and whereases that industry, trade, and agriculture and/or agriculture are promoted. Now, we can have one vote on a variety of applications, and we can do them one by one, but the record will be complete that we have determined that this has been done. And again, we're not immune from somebody coming in and questioning it, but I would expect if we go about this methodically that, if there's a challenge, we'd win it. And obviously, the more you try to get things right and the more transparent you are and the more people feel like this is fair, and let's use that word equitable, the less likely you're going to get somebody to come in and challenge it. A great deal of research has been done on this. It's more than just this PowerPoint. A great deal of research has been done on it, and I'm convinced that this is correct. So again, as part of our documentations, we will require the borrowers to report periodically what they're doing to deliver that public benefit that they promise. If it's a restaurant offering farm-to-table meals bought where the raw products are bought from agricultural sources within the jurisdiction of the JDA, then they can report that. Remedies, a right without a remedy is not a right at all. So what you will see later on provides for the interest rate to go up from, we ended up with not 0%, but 1.5% going to 3% if the public benefit's not delivered. And then even after the loan is repaid, we would retain audit rights. I mean, there's already litigation. You saw earlier about we'd have releases if we hook somebody up with a member of that network and they get bad advice, they're going to release the JDA. So if they're mad at their advisor, they are not able to sue us. If for some reason there is a misstatement or a false statement on any of this, and the ACC's auditors decide, well, we got to track down how this money was used, if we need to go back and find out if everybody told the truth on their application, then we don't have the right to audit, then we're not in good shape, but we will have the right to audit. So from start to finish, it's all about that. And that's what the paperwork's for, and that list of program documents. I hope that doesn't seem like a long list of program documents. And I can give you some horrible examples. In fact, I will give you some horrible examples. I'll give you one anyway. So we have, and this is a true story. This is ripped from the headlines. Actually, it wasn't the headlines. It was buried on, page B something. A downtown development authority on the coast bought I think $1,000 or $2,000 worth of gift cards from restaurants and paid $32,000 for those gift cards. So they bought something that they didn't need and paid 16 times what it was worth, and then turned around and gave them out, just gave them away. No documentation at all. I don't think that's defensible. But I think what we're setting out to do is legal and defensible and will be documented. And the board is key to that. The board will make a decision. Is this application a good application given the constraints that we have to labor under the law? I'll try to unshare.
Sorry, I muted for a moment. All right, that's fine. I trust your legal judgment on this. I just was curious.
It's a good question, and it gave me a chance to show off my PowerPoint again, so thank you.
Yeah, I saw that PowerPoint earlier.
Wait, I'm sorry. Could I ask you a question, Dan? So when you're when we're defining these industries, are we restricted by Department of Labor industry codes, or can we choose businesses that we fit our mission regardless of their code?
The law doesn't dictate that we use NAICS codes or any standard classification, but obviously, if you do have the weight of another governmental organization who studied the activities in that industry sector and said this is thus and so, it's a favorable fact that we do that, but we're not required to do that as long as what we do is defensible.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll come to the comment then. I agree that we're probably going to need a second meeting because I don't want to go beyond our 3:30 to 5 o'clock time frame for this unless people want to go beyond that time frame. I'd rather schedule another meeting to finish up the RLF guidelines, if everybody's agreeable with that. So we just work until we get to 5 and then continue at another meeting, or 5 till 5, and then we'll pick another meeting date. Is that agreeable to everybody? Okay. Well, let's work just a little bit more until we get to about 5 till. So the first, I'm guessing from what Dan says that we can use monies for those purposes in the later thing, but let's start with the eligibility criteria.
Could I interject?
Yeah.
David, we still have to get through the staff report and the council report, and so that we don't get started on something that we absolutely just can't finish today, what if we move to let them do their reports and then pick this up next time?
That's fine. I didn't look at the agenda. Let me look at it again. Okay. All right. Why don't we table the discussion of the RLF to a subsequent meeting, so we can have time for staff reports and council reports. I don't know if they need a motion for that, but would somebody put a motion to postpone the discussion of the RLF to a future meeting?
I motion that we postpone the RLF to a future meeting.
All right, got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Could you name who seconded it?
Erica?
Either, pick one.
Pick one of those two. All right. Do we have a call for the motion to be voted on? All right, let's just vote on the motion itself. All those in favor of postponing to a future meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion carries. So we're back to section F, staff reports. Ilka, do you want to start?
Sorry to disappoint, but I don't have a lot to say in my staff report this time, but that'll be a regular occurrence that Dan had added to the agenda this time. But I just appreciate all the conversation so far about the guidelines. Thank y'all for that.
Okay. The only other report on our agenda is our council report. Dan, do you have anything else to share with us before we adjourn?
I received a number of questions, and I can quickly give the answers to them right now if you like, or I can do it at our next meeting. Whatever your preference is.
Questions regard to what?
One of the board members had some questions about JDA affairs. For example, should the JDA designate a records custodian? I think the answer to that is yes. That's permitted, not required by the open records law, and it's a single point of contact. It's not, anybody can contact any board member or any representative of the JDA and ask for a record, but it doesn't become an official request until it hits the record custodian. And it's a real good way of keeping the burden down on individual board members. And when we get into something like a revolving loan fund, I mean, we're going to get open records requests. You can count on that. And the follow-up question was, is it the secretary that does that? It can be any board member or it can be staff. It's usually better that it be staff, but a lot of times it is the secretary of the development authority. That's one question. If we charge per page for producing physical copies of records, and there's a page charge, 10%, 10 cents, and it can vary. Who gets the money? Well, the JDA gets the money, and we are able to also charge for time expended after the first quarter hour by a paid employee. Well, we don't have a paid employee. We've got 11 staff. And perhaps if somebody made an open records request and we wanted to charge for the time in replying to it, we could base that on Ilka's time, whatever her rate is. We don't have to do that. If we do that, either the records charge or the time for the individual responding to it, those are part of the treasury of the JDA. It'll never be a lot of money unless we get some, very expansive request. Staggered terms we talked about. The CARES Act, this is a good question, Dave. I think you heard that on the sidebar last week. There's a big pot of money waiting at the state to be distributed to local governments. And some of that, Cobb County, for example, is an entitlement community, has already been reprogrammed into loans and some into grants. That money is not, according to the federal law, programmed to go to local authorities, but the state could channel it to local authorities. I don't know, I've asked GEDA to look into that, Georgia Economic Development Association, to look into it. But right now, we, the authority, are not at the table for that money. Although the two local governments that participate in local governments are. And that might be a source of additional funding for things like this. Recommendations for long-term project objectives. We probably ought to save that for a more general discussion. And then the presentations from the sidebars, my webmaster has those. It takes him a while to get them up. They'll probably be up this week, but sometimes it takes as long as 2 weeks. If anybody particularly wants a copy of one of the PowerPoints from the sidebar, send me an email and I'll send you your very own personal copy. And that was it.
And it's going to be danmccrae.com is where they're going to be posted.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
The PowerPoint from Thursday's training is already posted on the Google Drive. So that's 1 out of 2 in case you're interested.
Right, I saw that.
Dan, I remembered something that I should have mentioned during the staff report related to officers and directors insurance.
Yes.
That was mentioned in one of the sidebars. It's basically liability insurance to protect y'all in your, I guess, fiduciary role, since you'll be responsible for funds. So I've checked with our ACC risk management department. I shared our enacting resolution that has the signatures from both the city and the unified government, and she is checking with the insurer to see if the existing ACC policy will cover both ACC appointees and City of Winterville appointees.
And I would like to add to that, and Ilka and I have talked about this, that regardless of what they say, I won't believe it until we get a certificate of insurance.
I've requested that as well. So one thing that we may need to do, and if that's the case, Mayor Farrell, I may contact you, is it may end up that maybe City of Winterville's insurance covers the Winterville appointees and the ACC insurance covers the ACC appointees, but let's cross that bridge when we get to it.
Two things. In fact, I'm very glad you brought that up. So before we accept the first loan application. We need to have the public officer's liability insurance in place, and we have to have our registration with DCA in effect. They're sort of a short form registration, since our fiscal year will be June 30, and that's this month. We haven't started our first full fiscal year, but I talked live with somebody at DCA, and they do want sort of a stub registration for the 2.5 months or 2 months and a week that the JDA has been in existence. And now that we've adopted the bylaws and have officers, I'm able to proceed with that registration, and I'll be getting that done very shortly.
Thank you, Dan. It's a 4 till, so I'd like to, unless there are other questions for Dan, we can have it at another meeting. I'd like to talk about when we're going to meet next, so we can continue to discuss the RLF and other agenda items. What's people's time frame? I'm pretty flexible. I heard that where 5 o'clock was a preferred time during the week at least, right? Even for special call meetings.
I was more interested in having a 5 o'clock beginning. I think if 3 o'clock or 10 a.m. works for us now, I'm totally fine with that.
For during the summer, I actually prefer during the day sessions more so than the evening sessions.
Okay.
How's next Wednesday at 3 or 4?
Yeah, daytime meetings are fine for me over the summer. I'm not in school.
I didn't hear what you said, Erica. Could you please repeat it?
Anytime during the summer, I have cross-country practice in the morning, so I'm available from like 9:30 on. Sorry.
So shall we look at next Wednesday from 3 to 5? Is that going to work for everybody? The 17th?
Yes.
Do I have need a motion for that, or is everybody comfortable with that?
Good.
Mr. Chairman, it's probably a good idea to have a motion because of what the bylaws say about calling special meetings. If the whole board votes in favor of it, it's a done deal.
Do we have enough lead time for special meetings for notification purposes?
I think if we pass a resolution today with the whole board here, regardless of what the bylaws say, it's effective. Pro tanto super session.
All right. So do we have a motion to meet next Wednesday, the 17th, from 3 to 5 p.m.? All right. Dodd was the first to so move it. Who's the second?
Erica, second.
Erica seconds. Okay. All those in favor of that meeting next Wednesday, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion carries. So we now schedule our next meeting. I assume, Ilka, you'll set up the WebEx for that? Okay. All right. It was a good first meeting, and look forward to working with everybody as we work through all of these issues and get something going for our mutual constituents. So
Thank you guys. See you next week.
with that this meeting is adjourned.
Would you like to have a motion?
I keep forgetting Robert's Rules, volume 2.
I motion that we adjourn.
All right. I got a motion from Tim to adjourn. To a second.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right. Passes unanimously. We are so adjourned.
See you next week.
Great meeting. See you next week.